You've spelunked into the Mat Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Mat Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, it was a very tough week for pretty much everybody in the state of Utah when it comes to sports. I'll go over BYU running into a buzzsaw, and I'll talk about the University of Utah actually playing basketball. Yeah, I'll talk about what they're playing in and why it's kind of ridiculous. And then I'll talk about Real Salt Lake and the Utah Hockey Club losing touch, but not completely out of the playoff race yet. But yes, all of that to come. But thank you all so much for being here. As always, please like, subscribe, comment, 5 stars, thumbs up, wherever it is, however you listen. Helps me out a ton. And you know the drill by now. Get more in here, and we can get more episodes out the door. So thank you all so much. Let's just dive into it. So first, let's talk about the University of Utah basketball team and what they're going to be doing over the next week. So yes, they are in a postseason tournament. I don't know how else to describe it. It's the College Basketball Crown. This is the first time this tournament has ever existed. This is the first year of it. And what it pulls from is it pulls from teams from the Big 10, Big 12, Big East, and a couple of at-large participants. So the University of Utah is in it, and they're playing against Butler, the alma mater of Gordon Hayward. That's how people here would know them. And it's a game between a team that is 16-16, which is the University of Utah, and the team that is 14-19. The games are held in Las Vegas, and there's not much else to say about this tournament. I mean, it's on Fox as well as Hulu. You can also watch it on Sling. And I'm not being paid for this. I'm just trying to wrap my head around what this tournament is supposed to be. Because obviously we've got March Madness, the NCAA tournament, and then you've got the NIT, which is for the best teams that didn't get in. But then there's 3 or 4 other postseason tournaments that just don't make any sense. It's just it's a participation trophy at this point, is really what it is. But I mean, it's one heck of a participation trophy because the tournament offers a $500,000 prize pool in brand ambassador deals for NIL. And then the championship team receives $300,000 on top of it. So it's not for nothing. It's not for a trophy or a medal, which I'm sure you'll get both. Maybe some orange slices at the end of it too. But they get paid. So there's actual monetary gain for these kids to play in this tournament, but it's getting pointless. I mean, I'd love to know your guys' interpretation of this tournament, because for me, it's why risk the injury? Just go into next season. Go into the off season, whatever. Because nobody's going to be watching this. Outside of family members and people that know the kids playing in the games and the family members of the coaching staff and whatnot, nobody's going to be watching this. Are you? Because I won't be. I'll be looking at the scores, sure, but I don't really care. And if the University of Utah was in the NIT, I would have watched them because the NIT matters. But the College Basketball Crown? I don't know about that one. Alex Jensen will not be coaching in this, I don't believe. So I don't even know who the coaching staff is going to be for them. I don't even know which players are going to be playing, honestly, because I think 2 University of Utah guys have already declared that they're going to transfer, and that number could go up or down as we move along, but yeah. Which leads me to another point here. The transfer portal being open while the NCAA tournament is going is the dumbest thing ever. Truly, I don't know who thought that was a good idea. It doesn't make any sense. Wait for the tournament to be over. Who cares? Why have an arbitrary window? Give me a break. College is basically semi-pro at this point, right? The kids are finally getting paid. And so why treat them like indentured servants still? I don't understand this thinking. Like, have a free agency period like they do in the pros. I don't know, maybe model it after these successful professional leagues. Or have transfer windows like they do over in Europe. Why do this stupid thing? Like, I hate the people that run the NCAA. They're stupid. They're stupid, and they're greedy, and they're power hungry, and they deserve to lose their jobs. Okay, I got that out of my system. But that's truly how I feel about it. Like, transfer window, and I'm not alone in this. Even Stephen A. Smith agrees. Like, Stephen A. Smith, Dick Vitale, Seth Greenberg, everybody has said it. It's the dumbest thing. Like, you're trying to flex power that you no longer have by creating arbitrary rules. Give me a break. Get out of here. All right, so that's what the University of Utah is up to this following week. The tournament starts March 31st, which is a Monday, and it runs all week until April 6th, where there will be a champion, I guess. So that's just, in my opinion, sad. And good luck to them, I guess. Hopefully nobody gets injured. But the teams that are in it, let me run down this list for you so you can see the powerhouses that are in here. We got Arizona State, bottom of the Big 12. Boise State, I don't know how they didn't get into the NIT, but they didn't. Butler, bottom of the Big East. Cincinnati, bottom of the Big 12. Colorado, bottom of the Big 12. DePaul, bottom of the Big East. Georgetown, traditionally a power school, but bottom of the Big East. George Washington University. Yep. Nebraska, bottom of the Big 10. Oregon State, the school without a conference. Same with Washington State. Tulane, bottom of the American Athletic. Central Florida, bottom of the Big 12. USC, bottom of the Big 10. Utah, bottom of the Big 12. Villanova, bottom of the Big East. Like, you got some traditional names in this tournament, but none of them had a good year except for Boise State. So if I'm looking at this lineup, I'm thinking Boise State is going to romp. They're just going to walk through the tournament. But I haven't been keeping close tabs on that team, so I don't know who's transferred and who's staying. So that could be a thing, I guess. I don't know. This tournament is just wacky. I don't understand. I really don't. And the lead sponsor for this tournament is Ghost Energy Drink. So it's basically like a video game tournament. Like, I don't know. My goodness. All right, that's enough on that subject. So good luck to the Utes. Who knows? Maybe they'll go on a run and win it. But speaking of going on a run, BYU, their magical season's over at the Sweet 16. So interesting factoid about BYU, they are one of like 6 considered power schools in college basketball to have never made an Final Four. They haven't even made an Elite 8. So that streak continues, unfortunately, because Alabama hit a record number of threes against BYU. And, I mean, halfway through watching that game, it was just miss one. For heaven's sake, just miss one. That's what it was like. And then you saw Yegor Demon throw up threes like it was the beginning of the season. And it's like, well, yeah, BYU's not winning this one. They still put up 88 points. I mean, that's really good. But they gave up 113. So the old bugaboo of BYU running into a more athletic team on the basketball court, reared its ugly head, and that's what happened against Alabama. That being said, there was no shot BYU had a chance against Duke the following week because Alabama lost to Duke by 20 points. So their season was coming to an end this weekend regardless. It would have been nice if they would have gotten to the Elite Eight. But here we are. So what is the fallout from this? Well, the first domino to fall was Kenan Catchings declaring that he's going into the transfer portal, which is fair. He saw his playtime dwindle as the season went on. He got hurt, and we have AJ DeBansa and another ESPN top 50 recruit coming in that will probably take minutes away from the kid. So I have no issue with anybody transferring. So I wish Kenan Catchings all the best. I hope he gets somewhere that he gets all the minutes he wants and that he can go pro. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, coming to BYU. At the time, he was the highest rated recruit to come to BYU until Yegor Demin. So that was unfortunate, the season, how it turned out for him, but good luck to him in his new spot. What else is happening? Well, BYU got a transfer commitment from another big man, which they desperately needed, from the University of Washington. So he was a former walk-on, and now he's coming to BYU from Washington to, I would assume, for bench depth, but who knows with how Kevin Young coaches. Like, he went 11 deep in the NCAA tournament. No teams do that. Not even Duke does that. So he'll get playing time, is what I'm saying here. Now, after that, the big things to look out for, and I'm going to shock you here with these, I'm sure. Sense the sarcasm there. Richie Saunders, what is he going to do? Is he going to come back or is he going to go pro? Yegor Demin, what is he going to do? A lot of draft experts are saying he is too volatile to be able to get a lock on where he's going to go in the draft. Some people have him in the high lottery, top 10. Others have him dropping until like the 20th pick. So that's a wide range that he could settle by coming back another year. But his whole intention in coming to BYU was to get better, to get to the pros. And he certainly got a lot of attention, especially down the stretch of the season, basically from the turn of the year through now. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. He has said with AJ Debansa coming in that would be a very big factor on if he comes back or not. Interesting stuff there. I think it would be great for him to come back selfishly because that gives me more to talk about and more to watch. But for him, who knows? Now, his parents were both professional basketball players in Russia, so they kind of have an idea of how the whole thing works. The whole Yegor Demin story is very interesting, by the way. His dad knew Travis Hansen, which for all of you BYU basketball fans, you know Travis Hansen. He was one of the better ones to ever go through Provo, and he played in Europe for a while. He played with Real Madrid, and so did Yegor Demin's dad. So it's all very interesting what's going on there. So those are the two big dominoes, right? Richie Saunders and Yegor Demin. Then, of course, we've got Keba Keita, who could come back for another year, which would be huge. I think that would give him draft stock, like, a lot. Like, to go from not drafted to at least a second round, I think he would be very wise to come back to school. And that would create a juggernaut in Provo after just 1 year. If you remember when I was talking about when Kevin Young got hired, I was like, cool. He can recruit. He has connections to the pros. Can he coach? Oh boy, can he. So what'll happen when he gets that talent? And he's not done recruiting. There are still a lot of really good players in the transfer portal. It's very interesting what's going on in Provo right now. I know University of Utah fans, you don't want to hear that, but it's the story. It really is. Can BYU get up into blue blood territory up there with Houston and Texas Tech, Arizona in the Big 12, and then maybe strike some fear into the hearts of the SEC teams like Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas. I mean, I didn't even mention Kansas because they had a bad couple of years, but Kansas will always be up there. It's very interesting times in Provo. If we look at the roster now, the only guys that are definitely gone are Trevin Nell, who is almost as old as me. My goodness, he's old. And then a bunch of guys off the bench. Foose is sadly moving on as well. And then Trey Stewart is gone too. Other than that, oh yeah, and Mawat Mag. Other than that, the entire team could come back, potentially. Dawson Baker, Mihailo Boscovich, Max Triplett. I mean, there's a lot of guys on the team that could come back. Now, that would leave a lot of minutes to have to figure out for Kevin Young, but after his performance from the turn of the year through March Madness, I think he can do it. I really do. All right, so that's that for BYU basketball and the University of Utah. Let's move on to the Utah Jazz, who I just skipped over last week. When I finished editing the show, I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even talk about the Jazz. Well, there's not much to talk about. They're losing like they're supposed to be losing, and ESPN is writing articles about how the Jazz are losing and they're sleaze bags for how they're doing it. It's like they're not doing anything different than like New Orleans or Charlotte or anybody else. Seriously, they're not. And there was a great article in The Athletic from, and forgive me, I cannot remember his name, but he used to be the GM or the assistant GM of the Memphis Grizzlies back before they drafted Jaren Jackson Jr. And he was talking about how late in the season, Marc Gasol, who for Jazz fans, that's not a happy name to hear about, but Marc Gasol was tearing the Jazz up. Like he had something like 20 points by halftime. He had a double-double, I believe, by halftime. 20 points, 11 boards, something like that. And they pulled him at halftime because he was still recovering from a foot injury, and they didn't want him to re-aggravate it because they weren't going anywhere. And they wanted to get better odds in the lottery. So it's not just about tanking at this point for the Jazz. There's a lot of different ways to look at this. And it's something that I've been preaching for the last 3 years. It's look for the small wins. Look at how the young guys are maturing, how they're getting better, shooting percentages, turnovers coming down, assists going up, personal fouls going down. That's what you need to look at. But as fans, that's really hard to do because we just want to see our team do well and win. That's why we root for our team. That's what the Jazz are doing right now, is they're doing a lot of data gathering, a lot of intel. They're allowing Walker Kessler to shoot threes, which, I mean, right now it's a comedy of errors, but who knows? Maybe 3 years from now he'll be shooting threes like his name is Giannis or something. I don't know. But that's what they're doing right now. They're experimenting, and they're giving young guys more game time. They're not risking the veterans that could mean something next year and putting them at risk for getting injured or a serious injury. That's why they have Jordan Clarkson out for the year, allowing that medical procedure to help him deal with the plantar fasciitis in his foot. Like, that's a big deal. Get him ready for next year. Same thing with Lauri Markkanen. Same thing with John Collins. So, while the Jazz may be tanking, they're also doing it with an eye to the future. They're not just doing it to be crappy. They're doing it with an eye to the future because that's a lot of money invested in those three guys I just said right there. That's almost $100 million right there. And you don't want to put $100 million on the line for a game that literally means nothing. It means nothing to the Jazz. The Jazz aren't playing for playoff positioning. They're playing for lottery positioning. And so another thing that I think that Will Hardy and Danny, I think it was just Will Hardy, was brilliant in doing was after they got fined $100,000 for not playing Lauri Markkanen, you know what they did the very next game? They started Lauri Markkanen, they played him in the first half, and then he didn't play another minute in the second half. Just like, all right, NBA, we'll follow your rules, but we're going to follow them to the letter here. I loved that. I thought that was a funny nya to the NBA that the Jazz did there. So I'm very pleased about that. But for all of the vitriol being spit at the Jazz, I loved that article on The Athletic about looking at it a different way. Instead of having that emotional reaction like, oh my goodness, they're losing, they're doing it on purpose, they're putting out G League guys. No, they are, but they're also playing their young guys. Like, for the Jazz, there's no veterans playing anymore, really. Past the first half, they're not playing anymore. That's important because you're going to have those young guys, Kyle Filipowski, Isaiah Collier, Keontae George, Bryce Sensabaugh, Cody Williams, all these guys. What can you do? Can you play at this level? That's what they're finding out. And they're not risking their investments by doing so. Because younger guys bounce back quicker than veterans. That's just the human body. So, when you read all of this stuff from ESPN, ESPN's journalism has gone south. Far south. So take whatever they say with a huge boulder of salt if you read anything from ESPN about the NBA, because it's all pretty much garbage at this point. It's slop. But just remember, there's other ways to look at this. And the Jazz are doing just that. They're not just playing a G League roster. They're playing guys that they drafted high, that they want to see if they can play or not. And they're giving them plenty of time. And Will Hardy is giving them plenty of rope. If they make a stupid play, he's not instantly subbing them out. He's letting them go. So I, again, like what the Jazz are doing. They're positioning themselves well for the lottery while also learning a lot about these young guys that they've stockpiled and seeing what they've got. Speaking of seeing what they've got, the Utah Hockey Club, since my effusive praise of them last week, have looked terrible. They've looked awful. It started with that game against Detroit at home where Karel Vejmelka let in 2 goals that are just... I need to talk to a goalie because how do you let those in? Like, one just fluttered in over his shoulder. How does that happen? And then another one he just kind of let slide through his legs. Like, those were embarrassing that were let in against Detroit. And I got to say this, by the way. I've only been to 2 hockey games. I'll be going to a 3rd. But of the 2, Detroit Red Wings fans are terrible. They travel horribly. Loud, rude, interrupt game by throwing junk on the ice. Like, terrible. Terrible, terrible traveling fans. On the flip side, the Lightning fans, gloriously awesome. They were funny. They were just great. They were grateful. Like, they had fun. I talked to a couple of them when I was there. It was fun. They were fun. It was fun. They're saying, yeah, it was great. Welcome to the NHL. You know, all of that sort of stuff. The Detroit Red Wings fans, my goodness. Some of them were drunk, so that was part of it. The other ones were just loud and annoying. So that's my little side note there. We'll see what happens when I go to the Winnipeg game. I can't imagine too many people from Winnipeg will be traveling to this game because it doesn't mean anything for them. It's a huge game for Utah, but for Winnipeg, they've got pretty much everything locked up, so there's not really a reason to travel unless they want to come here and ski too. So that's part of it. But over the last 3 games, since scoring 6 goals, technically 8, against the Tampa Bay Lightning at home, they've scored a total of 2 goals in 3 games. In fact, that 1 goal against Detroit was in the first period, and that 1 goal against Florida was in the 3rd period. So that's technically 3 games, almost, where they didn't score a goal. Yeah, that's our hockey club. They also, I want to throw this stat out there, are tied for the 2nd most overtime losses in the NHL. The only team that has more is the Vancouver Canucks. The team that's tied with them is the Calgary Flames, both of which are ahead of Utah in the race. It's crazy. Hockey has some crazy stats. Like, really. Utah Hockey Club has 1 shootout victory. They've lost every other one. So that's where Utah's at. I don't know what needs to happen for them. When I was at the game at Detroit, everybody around me was saying that, like, the team just felt off in that game against Detroit. Just like everybody, there was a lot of simple errors occurring, especially in center ice, that just weren't happening against the Lightning a couple of days before. And Clayton Keller, in particular, was just off. Like, he has an aversion of shooting the puck all of a sudden. And he had a lot of opportunities to just fling one on net to see what would happen, and he just wouldn't do it. He would always defer to somebody else. On power plays, 3-on-2s, it didn't matter. He just passed it off. So I wonder what's going on there psychologically, because physically he looks fine. Like, he's still as fast as ever. I mean, he got rocked in the game against Tampa when they went to Florida, but something's going on, and I don't know what it is. But Utah Hockey Club is still mathematically alive. Realistically, not so much. They have 9 games left to play behind the St. Louis Blues, who haven't lost a game in like a month, which is very frustrating. They even beat the Avalanche the other night. And so so St. Louis Blues are currently sitting at 87 points. You get 2 points per win, 1 point for overtime loss and shootout loss. So they have 7 games left. So they can get 14 more points ostensibly. They won't, but that's how many they can get. Utah Hockey Club, on the other hand, has 9 games left as of me recording this episode. They haven't played their Sunday game against Chicago yet. So the Utah Hockey Club could get 18 more points. That would mean Utah Hockey Club is in if they win out. So win, you're in is where we're at with the Utah Hockey Club. Win, you're in. Just win every game left. 9-game winning streak, no big deal. Do it. Make history. Make it happen. For the games they have remaining, that's a little bit more interesting. So we've got Chicago today, who are currently out of the playoffs. They have 21 points less than Utah. So that's where they are. Then a humongous game on April Fool's Day against Calgary. That game could not be bigger. So there's that. Then they have a game against the Kings. And then the game I'm going to, the Jets. And then Seattle, who just got eliminated. Nashville, who's been eliminated for a while. Dallas, at Dallas, who will be toning it down a little bit because they just hit the 100-point mark. And they are locked into playoffs. Then at Nashville, like we discussed, and then a humongous game potentially to close out the season in St. Louis. It could be a win and you're in game for both clubs. So every game matters. And there's not too many gimmies left. The hockey club has to show up and show out. They have to play like they did against Tampa Bay at home and how they did against Buffalo at home and not the last 3 games. Wow. It's just been rough the last 3 games. Karel Vejmelka also needs a game off. He does. He's played in something like almost 20 straight games. That's too many. It's too much. He needs some rest. So we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting no matter what happens. And if any of you are at the game this coming Saturday against the Jets, I will be there as well. Hope to see you there. And now let's move on to Real Salt Lake. So, Real Salt Lake does not have a possession problem. It's more of a what are you doing with that possession problem? Because in every game, they've had the possession edge, which doesn't mean anything if you don't do anything with the ball. So that's what needs to happen. And it's the same old story. You know, sans that first half of last season with Christian Arango playing out of his mind, there's no attack for Real Salt Lake. There's none. There's no threat moving forward. Even with Diego Luna, there's not really a threat moving forward. They need to address that. And they're not going to be active in the transfer window. I almost said portal. In the transfer window this summer because Blitzer is close to selling his stake in RSL to the Miller family. Another owner that's not willing to spend money. Like, just look at the Jazz when the Miller family owned them. They wouldn't spend at all. And now they're going to own Real Salt Lake? Oh, man. And Ryan Smith could potentially sell his stake as well as part of that deal. So that would mean it would be the Miller family and then, like, some random hedge fund or whatever. It's all very frustrating. Like, the Miller family just needs to go away. Like, these clubs, I'll be saying this, I'll be beating this drum until the day I die. You're never going to make money when you own a professional sports team. You're just not. It's the same thing as in esports. You're not going to make money with your teams. You're not even going to break even. That's not the point. If you own these teams, you should try to win. You should spend money to win. As Herm Edwards famously said, you play to win the game. And to win the game, you got to spend money. Now, I understand Real Salt Lake is never going to spend more than the Los Angeles or New York clubs or Miami. I get that. But you at least got to try. And this past offseason, they did not try. This past transfer window, nothing happened. Nothing worth a grain of sand happened. And it's very frustrating as a fan. It is the same thing as watching the Cubs. The Cubs are owned by the Ricketts family, who may as well have rickets because they are terrible owners. They just want to make money. And that's not how you run a sports team. You don't. Look at the Cowboys. Yeah, Jerry Jones turned that into the most wealthy franchise in American sports. They haven't won a darn thing. They haven't done anything. Teams that do win are teams that spend money. The Chiefs spend money. The Eagles spend a lot of money. I don't like the coach. I don't like the quarterback, but I like Howie Roseman. He's the GM of the Eagles. He's very good at his job. And Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, spends a lot of money. Yeah, and they win. And the Rockies, like, I could talk about the Rockies till my face turns blue. They spend money. They just don't spend it wisely. Like, they spend money. They really do. It's just not on the right players or the right coaching system or anything like that. But they spend it. And I can respect that. So, suffice it to say, I'm not excited about this purchase. I'm not excited about the future of Real Salt Lake anymore if this purchase goes through. Because there's a lot of problems with Real Salt Lake under the surface. And that is when you're at the game, the concessions are horribly overpriced. Parking is ridiculously difficult. Yeah, there's a tracks line that goes straight to the stadium, which is fantastic. But not everybody can do that. And for everyone that does go there to park, it's ridiculous, and that's overpriced too. And then you look at the cost of the jerseys and the merch. You think Utah Hockey Club stuff is expensive? Go to a Real Salt Lake game. Holy. You don't know the names of these guys, and they're charging almost $300 for a jersey. Are you kidding? Are you insane? So there's a lot of problems going on at Real Salt Lake. And if the Miller family buys, they're going to get worse. All right, that's the show this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.